So our topic today is going to be called So You Want to Be a CISO. And this is SHAWN'S CISO or CSO strategy walkthrough. It's not a pretty deck. It's my working slides based on 6 or 7 years of my learning. When an e-commerce company that I was working for as a security operations director got acquired by a large CRM company, I was assigned a new security systems director role. So I took it upon myself to play mini CISO, learning from my 3 previous bosses in those roles. And I built a first 100 days of a CISO playbook. Then I implemented the playbook to see how it would work. After a while in that role, I got assigned a new role, and I was now responsible for security of cloud identities across 2 very well-known cloud providers. I made some minor changes to my playbook, and then I implemented it again. At that point, I realized I want to take on a CISO role. So I found a job doing just that. And well, I iterated on my playbook again and again. And I likely will do it again. So this is my personal playbook. I do share pieces of it with people and with teams who are curious, and now you get to see it. So if you're a manager, a director, a VP, or CISO, or even in IT or another department getting into a manager or a leader roles, quite a bit of this is not specific to security and not necessarily specific to only a CISO role. It can be applied to many other boss type positions, leader type positions. So just, you might be able to take note even if you are not in the CISO path today or at the exact moment. So we are going to get into our death by slides right now. So this slide deck was last updated according to my notes here on October 24th, 2022. So I'm going to flip through the slides. In this case here, I don't have a whole separate script like I had on other presentations because this is truly my, it's my notebook. Yes, it's in slides, but it's my notebook of how I run a program. So here's the agenda of what we're going to get into today. I'm going to go through my 100-day plan or my 30, 60, 90-day plan of being a security leader or a CISO. And then I'm going to go through these different subcategories. These are kind of like the deep dives that are part of the 30, 60, 90-day plan. Understanding the existing security organization or the security program. So the steps I take to learn of the existing security program. Get to know my peers across the company. Get to know my partners within the company. Build team, you can't see anything there. Build team functions and roles. So how do I build out my team? How do I determine who does what? What are the different people's roles? Ensure immediate security architecture and plan for year. So it's the idea of what do we need to do right now and what's the plan for the rest of the year. Application, product, platform security assessment. So an AppSec assessment, a product security assessment, a platform security assessment, the steps needed for that. How to support sales. And this is, again, from Sean's playbook. Most of the orgs that I have worked with are enterprise software companies or commercial software companies. So generally, the customers that I'm used to are business to business. I have worked in the public sector, yes. So that might be a different scenario. I have done some security work in the financial services and healthcare sector. But I do think when I'm talking about security sales and support enablement here, I'm generally thinking business to business, enterprise software companies, selling from a business to business perspective. So again, Sean's notes. And then a security compliance assessment, kind of assessing your compliance areas. So these are the areas we're going to cover in our time today in Death by Slides. So let us do this. So first off, I almost named this show the first 100 days of a CISO, but I changed it to So You Want to Be a CISO. So this is basically my 100-day plan, or I initially drafted as a 30, 60, 90-day plan and then switched it to a 100-day plan. Just is what it is. So let's get into it here. When I first created this plan, I looked online and said, I need some resources here because I don't know how to create my my startup plan as a security leader. So if you remember this, I had been working for a CISO at an e-commerce company, and we got acquired by a larger company, and I was assigned a new role, and I decided to create a playbook. Even though I was in a director role, security operations director role, I still wanted to play mini CISO and create a playbook. So I did some Googling, and I located the Gartner's roadmap of a CISO's first 100 days, and then one that I thought was amazing, which is New Harbor Security's the first 101 days as a new CISO, a Chief Information Security Officer's playbook. So I borrowed both of those to start my plan, and then I've just continued to iterate on that since I got into it. So that's where we're going to get things started. So there's pieces that are from both of these. You can even, if you look at that Gartner slide there, it's dated 2016, which is when I first started this. And like I said, I created this way back when. I've been iterating on it ever since. But I did definitely roll this out long before I was a CISO. I was director of security role, director of information security, director of SecOps. So let's walk through the days and kind of how I plan this out. And I will make a note here. There's always an asterisk next to this. Even though here are the things to do week by week and day by day, it's very likely it's not going to play out like this. So it's a plan. You know, life happens as we're making plans. Here's the plan that I work from. I get started. My first day in a new role. This is the stuff I do. Get my arms around the security program. Pretty simple. Just start digging through document directories. Start asking team members like, hey, who does what here? What are we working on? Just have some casual conversations and start taking some notes. That's really how I get started there. Just learning the security program, getting started. I get to know my colleagues, like who's on my team, who works for me or who works adjacent to me, who are on other teams that maybe they should work for me, but they don't for whatever reason. Have my first department meeting within the first 2 weeks. I think that's important. Again, if you're a manager, if you're a director, if you're a CISO, have that department meeting pretty quickly, right? Within your first 10 days of being there, usually I would say within your first week. Invite everybody to it and tell folks who you are, where you come from. And I have a whole nother slide deck that says, hi, I'm Shawn, this is what I do, and here's my background, here's the stuff I've worked on before, kind of name dropping all the interesting things that I think are valuable. And then here's a little bit about me, my family, my personal life. Like I basically dox myself to my new teams. Budget review and associated metrics. Good bullet to have here to remind you, hey, go find out who's your partner in finance to talk to. If you don't know who your partner in finance is, well, if you are a CISO, you have a C in your title. Sure, it might be a small c depending on the company you're with, but you have a C in your title, so you shouldn't feel uncomfortable to go reach out to your chief financial officer, who by C titles, you are at pseudo peers, if not direct peers. Find out, hey, who's my financial person to talk to? That way you can go ask that person, hey, show me my budget. Someone must hold your budget. It's possible if you're a CISO, your boss may have your budget, whether your boss is your CIO, your CTO, your Chief Product Officer, Chief Digital Officer, whatever it may be. They may know where your budget is, but you can always go right to your finance partner. So learn your budget, kind of get a sense of metrics, starting with whoever's holding your budget right now, and just meet people. I make it a point to meet everybody on my team, have a one-on-one with everybody on my team. Yes, my direct reports, but also my indirect reports and my indirect reports, depending on how big the team is. I'm going to meet everybody on the team for 20, 30 minutes, say hi, get to know them. People who have just been friendly to me as I walk in the door, schedule some time to meet with them, and then start to get a sense of who's who. So first couple weeks. Second couple weeks, queue up a security assessment. So some would say like a risk assessment. Others would say like a cybersecurity maturity assessment. What I'm saying here is have someone conduct a security assessment that can look at your overall security program. And I'm going to go into this. I have a whole section about this. Go into your overall security program and find out where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are. I like to do a security maturity assessment to find out which areas are more mature than others. And you could conduct this yourself, but I would recommend, because you're going to have a really busy first 100 days, to reach out to a third-party partner to do this instead. So good use of learning your budget, finding out if you actually have budget to use, and jumping on it right away. Hold one-on-one meetings with all InfoSec team members. I kind of just said that in the previous column, so, second couple weeks. Begin to understand what projects or initiatives will be active in 6 months' time. So as we started this deck, like I was saying, start to get your arms around the security program. But now starting to find out, now that you get your arms around the program, okay, what's underway now and what do people have planned for the back half of this year, or depending on where you are, could be the front half of next year. So what's planned for the next 6 months? Again, I'm not making any changes. I just want to understand what projects, what initiatives are planned. This will be very helpful down the road. Weeks 5 and 6, this is all an estimate, but weeks 5 and 6, prepare steering committee materials. So if you're preparing steering committee materials, I wonder, do you have a steering committee? Do you have an information risk committee, or do you have a security steering committee that's made up of some members of your information security team and some members of your either extended leadership team or your executive leadership team or your C-level team? If you don't, you're going to want to create one, right? This is an area for you to leverage your leadership across your other leadership and have a recurring meeting. Some of your compliance frameworks are going to require you have either an information risk council or a security steering committee. So you should start preparing materials. We can talk about this later, but you can also Google, what should a security steering committee contain, or what should an information risk council contain? If you are doing ISO 27001 compliance, it will actually tell you specifically what it needs to contain. Okay, next one. Hold one-on-one meetings with business leaders. So in the weeks 3 and 4, you had one-on-one meetings with everyone on your team. Now it's time to go meet business leaders. And my thought around this is, if you are in a director role, go meet all your adjacent directors. If you're in a CISO VP role, make it a point to identify every VP that's at your company and schedule a meeting with them. That's what I do. I find every VP. So I was at a company where there were, I will say, unfortunately, 35 VPs. It's actually, in larger companies would have a whole lot more. There were 35 VPs, and I scheduled one-on-ones with all 35 of those VPs. 30-minute meetings, get to know them. I actually made them 20-minute meetings. I said, we'll block off 30, but we'll make it 20. That way we're not running from meeting to meeting. Get to know them briefly as humans and what their role is at the company. And we'll talk more about what to put in those meetings, because I have a whole section on that in these slides. And then the last bullet here, begin participation in security projects. I'm not going to go into every bullet here in detail because I actually have follow-on slides that we'll get into these. So begin participation in security projects. So if you already have teams doing security work, whether you actually inherited an existing security team or you're a security team of one and other people are doing security work over in like maybe the product development side or in the IT side, wherever security work is being done, go sit in on those project meetings. If you find out like, oh, we have a weekly stand-up, get in on that. We have a project review that is something security, something. Just get in that. Start joining the conversation. You're not going to lead it. You're just going to participate. Okay. Weeks 7 and 8. We're now past day 30. If you've been here for a month, you've decided, I'm going to stay at least for a second month. Or they've decided, we're going to let you stay at least for a second month. Review the operational security budget. You're like, wait, didn't we already go over the security budget? Yep. You initially met your finance partner in the first month. You had a first pass of it, and then you just kind of moved on. You went and did other stuff. So now, go back and review your budget now that you know a little bit more. Again, meeting with your finance partner who possibly saw how your budget worked a year ago and maybe 2 years ago. Go have that review with them, have that discussion with them. Start building a relationship with your finance partners. It doesn't have to be, and it most likely will not be your CFO unless your company's small. But go find who your finance partner is and go meet with them. Establish a program vision. Draft out a vision statement, a mission statement. Your security program vision should, and I will say should, and then I will even like in asterisk say must, align with the company's vision, the vision of the CEO for the year. So go find out what the CEO is saying, like, here's our vision for the company for the year, and create a cybersecurity or information security program vision that aligns with your CEO. You can start drafting. By the way, you create a vision statement. We want to be the most secure, blah blah blah. We want to be the most compliant, blah blah blah. Something along those lines, or maybe something else. We want to build trust with our customers by doing X, Y, and Z. You can then start to build out maybe your key objectives underneath that vision. I'm not going to go deep into this. We'll do that another day. But your key objectives, and your objectives, they better line up with whoever's above you on the food chain. Next bullet, take inventory of the security team skill sets and establish development plans. So this is you now saying, I've met with everyone on my team, got to know them a little bit. Now I'm trying to get a sense of how good are they at their job? Are they in the right job? Should they be in a different job? Should they be, as one of my friends once said, promoted to customer, aka scent packing, because they're just not cutting it for one reason or another. But really, that's not the key focus. The key focus is I may have people on my team that I have inherited into my role. What are they good at? What do they want to do? Get a sense of their skill. Get a sense of what they want to learn and grow, and start building. Now you can start to build professional development goals for your team members. But you can also start to think about who's going to own what at the end of this 100-day period. Begin the security assessment. A few weeks back, I said queue up a security assessment, which I meant go find somebody to do your security assessment. This week, begin the security assessment. If you weren't able to find any budget, I'm so sorry for you. You're going to conduct the assessment yourself. I'm going to show on a slide down the road how, in ways you can conduct a security assessment. I might even do a whole show on that someday, but we'll get into that down the road. But begin the security assessment. Hopefully, you're able to bring in a third party to do that for you. There's a lot of great small companies that do security maturity assessments. There's also mid-size and very large, top 4 companies that do that. So lots of companies do security assessments. It's not, you won't have a difficulty finding that. Many of your security vendors even do security assessments. Many of your security product vendors do security assessments. SIM vendors do. EDR vendors do as well on their services side. Okay, moving on. Halfway through your second month, write or review the security charter. So we talked about the program vision. Now we're starting to draft the actual charter. This charter will play into your security steering committee. You're going to, draft your charter. Like, here's why we're here. Here's what we're doing. The vision was what we see down the road. The charter is, why do we exist? What are we going to work on? Start drafting or review the existing charter. In many cases, you'll inherit a charter because some compliance framework or previous security leader already drafted one. Review it. Is it still applied to today and where the business is headed? If so, great. Just make sure you wrap your brain around it. If you don't feel comfortable with that charter, rewrite it or write a fresh one. Now you get to appoint your team leaders. This is an exciting time, but a scary time too. Say you have a 20-person team and you realize some of your leaders are no longer going to be leaders in certain areas, and it just is what it is. Make this point to appoint your team leaders. So maybe you're appointing your directors. Maybe you're just saying this person's a team lead. It's not actually a promotion, but they're now taking the lead role here. Get those appointments done. Share it with your team. Let it be known. Yes, there may be people very happy and there may be people very unhappy. It is a thing you need to do. It's part of being a manager, part of being a leader. Be visible and establish security projects. So we said a while ago, participate in projects. Now, get into projects, be a voice, start being more of a voice, start having opinions in security projects. So we're like, again, we're a month and a half in, and now we're starting to affect change, right? Appointing new team leaders, becoming more visible in projects. Towards the end of month 2, review the budget for a second month. Go back to your finance partner again. Let's talk about the budget. I learned a little bit more. Start thinking about where you might want to make some changes, where you, if you have that budget, where you might want to make some spend changes, where you may realize, based on what you're learning, maybe you do or you don't have the budget for what you want, what you're picturing will be the future. What you will then see moving forward is every month review your budget, but it's in here as a bullet. Every month forever review your budget. Second bullet here, meet with security steering committee or board of directors. So if there is a security steering committee, have your first security steering committee meeting. That could be your information risk council or your security steering committee or board of directors. It's interesting. I think I grabbed this bullet from one of those example templates I mentioned at the top of this slide deck, or board of directors. I feel like, I don't know, it's like an and/or. Having the conversation around board of directors, I have looked at it this way. If you have had experience presenting at the executive leadership level, and you have had previous experience presenting to the board of directors or some training as to how to work with the board, propose to your direct report or your direct manager, so whoever your direct manager is. This is if you are at a C level, if you're at a CISO or a CSO level. Propose to your boss or your CEO, hey, I think I'd like to present what I want to schedule a meeting with our board to let them know what I have found and learned, kind of my initial assessment of the company. It's not going to be your regular board meeting, but kind of like your first 90 days, so first 60 days. You drafted your security charter a couple weeks ago. Now you're bringing that charter to the security steering committee or the executive team, and you're saying, you all good with that? Anybody have an objection with the charter you drafted? Get that verbal approval. Maybe you need it be written depending on the kind of company you're in. Form a security awareness team. So this is not just security awareness training, but it's you may have folks that are doing security awareness. You may not. So I made a bullet here to say, okay, now we need to form security awareness. And that's going to take on all different types of shapes. But I think of the security awareness team as they don't always have to be the most technical people. I think of the security awareness folks are almost like the marketing folks of our security org. It might end up just being you if your team's really small, but you may have people who have said, "Oh, I've used, X training tool before," or I've had to draft, monthly security announcements out to the company before, and I love doing that. And you're like, "Oh, great! You sound like you're a person who loves to communicate." Written, verbal and written, you're going to be part of this team. So it could be people from all over the security org. In my experience, sometimes my GRC team tend to fall into those roles, but it doesn't have to be the case. All right, what's the third month look like? We passed 2 months here. What does the third month look like? So formalize your security program strategy. We've been kind of drafting that as we go, building out our vision, building out our charter, and again, you want to build out your key objectives that you want to focus on for the rest of this year. Those key objectives must line with your CEO's key objectives, and just start to formalize that strategy and share it with your executive team so they have awareness. Share it with your internal team so they have awareness. And then I mentioned your key objectives here as well. Okay, moving on to the middle of our third month. Start monitoring the program delivery. Like, how are we delivering? Have you been committing for the past 2 years to roll out endpoint detection and response, and you've been saying for the past 2 years it'll be done by the end of the month? And every month you keep saying, It'll be done by the end of the month. Like, now's your time to say, you've already been assessing this before, but that's what we're talking about here. Monitoring the actual delivery. Are we committing and are we delivering? Are we delivering, period? Are we delivering based on times that we've said? So again, this is a bullet that you may have addressed earlier, but it's in here so you are checking to see where and when things are delivered, because you may have to make some changes. Wrapping it up, in my first 100 days, continue monitoring the security program delivery. So we're starting to get into the rinse and repeat of a lot of things. Present at a company all-hands meeting. This bullet is on here. It is so important. Here's what happens to me, very common in the, let me change the slide so you can see it here. Here's what happens to me in the third month. This whole set of bullets here kind of falls off the rails a little bit because business happens. A big partner event, big sales kickoff, and you need to go be involved in that. A nasty security incident comes in at 4 p.m. on a Friday and throws everything off. These things are going to happen. So presenting at a company all hands is something you want to have on your schedule and you want to do. Even if you're an introvert and you're like, I am scared to death to present at a company all hands meeting. If you are in a CISO role, you need to. You need to be that face. You need to be the front of information security, of cybersecurity, and you need to go to whoever's coordinating the all-hands meetings and get your name on the agenda. A little bit of, you can decide what you want to present. It could be something that is being worked on internally. It could be a little bit about the new program. Get yourself on the agenda. Build out something to talk about that you think everybody in the company would be interested in. And then the end is business continuity planning, disaster recovery planning, as we start to kind of mature our security program. Those are the first 100 days from a bullets perspective. All right, so now we are picking up where we left off on our So You Want to Be a CISO episode, right? We're going through the initial days of being that security leader and running your security program. We're going to dive a little deeper in some of the bulleted items that I just covered as we were getting started here. And so one of the bullets we talked about, learning your security org and security program. Remember, these slides here are just my rough notes. So there's nothing fancy about them. These are the notes that I actually work from when I'm getting started in my security programs. So things I need to learn while I'm getting familiar with the new company that I'm at and the new security program I'm at. Here's a list of bullets that I actually work from. Disciplines, right? Team overall role. I want to get a sense of, what do I own? What are the areas that are important to the company, that the company believes that in the role that I'm in, I own these things. Do I own endpoint security? Do I own application and product security? Do I own governance, risk, and compliance? Do I own physical security? Do I own DevOps? Does DevOps somehow fall into my area? Do I own cloud? Do I own cloud security? Do I own privacy? I need to know the disciplines. Like, what is responsible for us overall? Do I own all of IT? Does that fall into my area? A lot of organizations are hiring a CISO who's now playing CISO/CIO, but under the title of CISO. So very important to know those. Areas of responsibilities / roadmap. So what are the different areas that we are responsible for, and kind of what's the roadmap that these area responsibilities are heading towards? Who are our team members? What roles do they play? Get a sense of my team members and their roles. So, okay, here's, this is in your one-on-one with each of your team members. Here's my name. Here's my title. And then say, well, what does that really mean to you? Right? So get a sense of what people's names are, what their titles are, and what they really do. Take notes on each of these people, because you're going to want, as a manager, to have kind of like running notes of everyone that reports into you. You're going to want to do this for everyone who's directly reporting to you. So often in my case, I'll be at a VP level, and my direct reports may or may not be at the director level. They may be at the manager or senior manager level. And in some cases, they may just be individual contributors. Just depends on the org. But say I have directors reporting to me or senior directors reporting to me, and underneath them, they have individual contributors or they have managers. I want to know everybody. I want to at least get a sense of who's who to get started. Email, distros, Slack channels, or others. build that list, in a document here. I'd take these bullets and make a document right out of it. Build a list of all the email distros that your team is using, is responsible for. As you're getting to know your team members, find out the hidden email distros. Same thing with Slack. What are the Slack channels that exist for your team? Find out what the hidden ones that are out there as well. The ones that are maybe just used internally with the teams. You want to get a sense of what's out there. You want to get a sense of where comms are happening. I'm not saying you need to be in every single Slack channel, but just to know they exist. You may actually realize, like, your email distros, there may be a security all distro, and then there might be an all security distro, and then there might be an everyone security distro, and they may have different people in it. You may find out your email distros are an absolute mess. Get on it. First, learn it. Same thing with Slack. You may find out that there's an application security Slack channel, and then there's a security operations Slack channel, and then there's a compliance and security Slack channel. For me, that drives me crazy. I want my Slack channels to all have a similar naming convention. Security _ governance, security _ product, security _ ops. Again, that's just me. I like format in my Slack channels, but at least find out where they are. I'll make some changes down the road. I'm not going to make changes right away. I'm just learning info here. Projects. What was recently completed? Learn it. Learn what was recently completed, what projects are underway, and what is planned for the next 3 months. Again, in one of the earlier bullets, we talk about this, but what was done recently, what is underway, what is planned for the next 3 months. Get a list of all of those. What are the daily operations? I've learned this acronym and term years ago, and now I kind of use it everywhere. Run the business, RTB. What is being done to run the business? Run the business stuff is sometimes kind of tough to measure, and so getting your arms around the RTB, the run the business stuff, very early will help you get a sense of, okay, I don't know, I'm not necessarily sure how I'm going to quantify progress here because it's regular operations. We're just running the business here. What tools, every single tool, what tool is now in your either area of responsibility or adjacent area of responsibility? So get any AppSec tools out there, some SAST, DAST, SCA tools. Maybe they don't report to your team because they may be off in software engineering. Maybe they do. What vulnerability management tools, what endpoint security tools, what SIM do you have? We can go down the whole list. Do you have any cloud security tools? Do you have any mobile device management tools? What are you using for identity management? Just get a list of the tools. Find out the tools. Find out the tools. Find the licensing information. Find the vendor that you bought the tool from. Are you using a reseller? Are you using a reseller to purchase your tools? You're buying tools directly. Just learn what you can. Services, managed service providers, augmentation. Same thing with tools. What services are you using? Are you using any managed service providers? Do you have like an MDR vendor, managed detection and response vendor? Do you have someone who's actually running your SIM for you? Are you using any type of external services that's not in-house? Are you doing any staff augmentation? Was there a virtual CISO before you got there, and are they still there? That is very common. We talked about budgets. Learn your budgets. What are your bills? How often do you need to pay bills? How do you pay bills? And get a sense of expenses. Are your employees submitting expenses on a monthly basis? Is there a stipend for home internet use for your employees, for mobile phone monthly service? Is there a stipend that every year or 2 years people can buy a new phone and the company pays for it? Is there no official stipend, but people are doing this because some manager in the past approved it? Just get a sense of what people are doing for expenses. As you get to know your people one-on-one, you can actually ask them that in your get to know people, like, hey, what are the things you are expensing? Do you travel much for work? Do you have any expenses for home? So any things like that. Problem areas. People, if you ask people, hey, where are there some culture issues here? Where are there some problems here? Some people are going to be open and honest and listen closely. Some might fear you and might fear sharing openly. So, listen between the lines. In the BEE, business ending event, the thing that could sting you. I ask this question of everybody. I did not create this idea. I borrowed it from a great friend over at the Product Security Group, Mark French over at the Product Security Group. What is the business ending event I love to ask this to every single person in my first meeting with them. It's me basically saying, what do you think is the highest risk problem to this company? And you can say to this company and our employees, or to this company and our customers. What do you think could be the thing that could end the business? And just listen to what people say. See if you start to hear repeating common answers to that question, or is everybody bringing something different to the table? We're gathering intel right now. We're learning. Okay, peers and partners. So the thing I just mentioned was getting to know your team and areas of your team. Now, get to know your peers, get to know your partners as well. So same idea we were just talking about. Go get your hands on the company org chart. That's what I do. So if you are, if you have an HR, whatever your HRIS is, go grab your company org chart from that, or, the PowerPoint that has the company org chart. Find the company org chart. Meet with every executive that reports to the CEO. Meet with the CEO. Actually, meet with the CEO. Meet with every executive that reports to the CEO. They're all busy, by the way, so it's gonna be tough to get on their calendar. You likely will have to go to their administrative, their executive admin to get on their calendar. But just reach out to them directly, and they'll let you know how it works. They may have an EA, and you may not. That is very common. But reach out to them. They are your peers. Some of them are your bosses too, and get on their calendar for nice to know you, and you can have some of these conversations with them. If you're a CISO, you are most likely at a VP level. If you're a CISO, it's possible you'd be a director, senior director. It's also possible you could be an SVP or an EVP at the CISO level, but most commonly it's a VP level. I would say meet every peer in the company at your level. It doesn't matter what their role is. Meet them. Get to know them. You're not going to have a regular one-on-one with all of them. You may find some that you're going to want to have a regular one-on-one with. You're going to find some that might be challenging to work with, and you're going to get that sense from that first meeting. You're going to find some who you're going to love to work with, who maybe you didn't realize it. Meet all your VPs and take a note on what is their area of responsibility. Again, identify your direct peers. Who are your direct peers? It's very possible they are just at your level in the company. You can kind of build a chart of who your direct peers are. In the case of who are the people you're going to be working with on a regular basis. And everybody you meet, ask them the question of, what do you believe is the biggest risk to the company, or the BEE, the business ending event, and just listen to what people have to say. All right, build a team. I don't know what the team's going to look like. Maybe the team will eventually look something like this. Maybe. I'm not saying your team looks like this, and I'm not saying it ever will look like this. This is an example that I put together several years ago. It's even slightly outdated. I look at this, I'm like, wait, am I missing? Yeah, I'm missing some things that I probably would add to this deck if I were to update it. So maybe this is what your team could look like. But find out, what does your team look like right now? Build out the org chart today of your team, and then you can take this slide here as an example of, maybe this is where we want to head. Maybe this isn't where we want to head, but here's 5 core domains, and then areas of responsibility that could be under those. Right? I'm not naming by people, or I'm not naming by person or by actual role, but more capabilities. Because the idea of this type of org chart here is, how are we meeting these different core responsibilities here? So I like this type of chart. You can take this kind of chart and modify it, but there's no person, right, in this chart. It's capabilities. And so I like going through this and say, are we doing network security down on the bottom left here? Are we doing NetSec? Can I check that off and say someone's doing NetSec? And then maybe I can make some notes of I know who's doing NetSec, and they don't report to me. They're actually over in IT, but I can start to build out ideas. So I like this type of chart here. Security architecture. I mentioned this in the early slides there. These are going to be some basics of security architecture, and I don't mean this like product security. I just mean kind of architecting your overall security capability. We're starting to get a little technical here. I look at these as you see it on the slide here, the necessary basics, no matter what kind of company you're at, the necessary basics, no matter what. I did mention in my earlier slides that you want to queue up a security maturity assessment, and I suggest you bring a third party in to do that instead of doing it yourself. Don't wait for those assessment results. go through this list and do this assessment yourself. Your security maturity assessment should give you some of this information, but it may not. Here are the ways that I look at things that are kind of critical to just run my business and get my arms around it. And some of these ideas I got right from the Center of Internet Security, Critical Security Controls. And I do think of things as, from a top-down perspective. I actually look at these as an order of priority. Identify all your assets. All right, identify all your assets. This will never end. I feel like you'll never end. I feel like 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 18 months from now, you'll find more assets that you didn't know, but start to identify all my workstations, all my end user workstations, all my servers, learn how many AWS accounts we have and what they are, kind of get that list of all the AWS accounts. Do you have an AWS admin that can go and pull those for you? Are you using Azure? How many Azure tenants do you have? Azure subscriptions? Get a list of all your Azure tenants, Azure subscriptions. Get a list of all your GCP accounts. Like, get a sense of all of your assets, physical and virtual is kind of what I'm saying here. Just start to get that list, because that's going to build down on the things we do down below. Learn a little bit about your perimeter. What's being used as a firewall for the corporate environment, or firewalls in the cloud environment. Start focusing on the firewall. Find out what's being used for firewalls, who's managing the firewalls. Get a list of ports that are allowed, IP addresses that are whitelisted. Start questioning any IPs that have been allow listed on firewalls. Start questioning any allowed external access that's not 443 or HTTPS. Start to just, you don't have to, the nice thing about this is you don't have to be a firewall expert. Just start asking questions like, hey, let me see a list of firewalls. Let me see the IP addresses that have been allowed listed. Let me see the ports that are allowed, and just start questioning anything that's not 443. Any IPs that are allowed listed, question them. Any port that's allowed, question them. Learn. MFA, all the things. MFA for all accounts. This is tough. This is something you'll see in all of your compliance reports. Say, do you have multi-factor authentication for all accounts, for all this or for all that? You want MFA everywhere. We all know that you want MFA everywhere. Like, this was probably a discussion we were having in 2014, 2015. Now it's just like, of course you want MFA everywhere. But you probably don't have MFA everywhere. Start with a corporate identity and access management space. Your corporate Active Directory, your corporate Okta, or whatever you're using. Start there. Do you have MFA for everything on that environment? If you don't, why not? Is it kind of like a break glass domain admin account that doesn't have IAM on it? Make a note of it. Is there kind of a rule that domain admins don't have MFA because of blah blah blah? For some reason, service accounts don't have MFA. Very common. For some reason, learn where you don't have MFA and make a note of everything that doesn't have MFA on it. Really, the idea is MFA for all accounts except where you approve an exception. You want MFA everywhere. Identify critical systems that are not in the corporate single sign-on environment and get them over there. So, is your company using like a Salesforce for CRM or Workday for HR? Are those rolled into your single sign-on environment? No. If not, do they have the MFA capability turned on? No. Yes. Are you using some type of financial services application, sales application? Are they managed under corporate identity and with MFA enabled? Yes or no? Like, start to learn every account. Don't just stop at the Okta and the Active Directory and say, yep, we have MFA everywhere. Go check every account that's not tied into those to check where there's MFA. What about developer accounts? Test accounts, are they not behind MFA? Because folks say, well, they're not production data, they don't need to be behind MFA. They need to be behind MFA. Get them there behind MFA. Build a list to migrate any application that's using local MFA. So think about, like, I'm going to use Salesforce as an example, Workday as an example. They both have MFA, and you can locally enable MFA. But I'm going to recommend that you have not only MFA enabled, but single sign-on. So get those rolled into like your Azure AD SSO or your Okta SSO. And then once you get things over to your SSO, you're just making a note of this right now. But once you get those things over to your SSO, you need to turn off the local MFA. Otherwise, your Salesforce users can log in either through SSO or through the MFA built into Salesforce. So you gotta disable the local authentication. MFA everywhere, SSO, anything you can. I'm moving on. Vulnerability assessments and patching. You can't do vuln management without knowing your assets. So the bullet that we had up above, identify all assets, is really important to get done before you get into vuln assessment and patching. And keep in mind, if you don't know all of your assets, you'll never be able to tell anybody, what the real risk is to the business from a vulnerability perspective. You won't really be able to talk about risk without knowing the assets that you are keeping an eye on. So vuln assessment and patching, basically what I'm talking about here is I'm assuming you have some type of vulnerability assessment or vulnerability management capability or tool. Starts ensuring that you have a service level agreement, an SLA or an SLO, and focus on getting all of your critical vulnerabilities addressed within a short period of time. For example, within 1 week, with a service level objective of 3 days. We need to get those critical vulnerabilities for anything internet facing very quickly before bad guys do bad things. And that should focus on corporate environments, product environments, product environments. Start getting vuln patching and assessment underway. So just kind of a bullet here, necessary basics. Endpoint security on all endpoints. Again, identify your assets. If you don't know your assets, you don't know where all your endpoint security is, and you won't be able to say we've got some type of EDR solution keeping an eye on every single asset. You want it on all endpoints. Your user workstations, of course. Your servers, heck yes. But also your cloud environments. Can you put your endpoint security capabilities on your cloud environments? I want it on all endpoints. So I'm going to make a note on this, utilize an MDR service. I'm going to save this for a second until I get down to SIM, because this could actually go for endpoint detection and response. Remember, endpoint security nowadays is not just an AV tool, but it's also detection and response. Do you have an IDS, an IPS in place, intrusion detection, intrusion prevention system? If so, where? What's it looking at? Is it really what is it providing? Let me fix my slides so you can see better. What's it providing here? Where's your SIM? Do you have a SIM in place? Get a SIM in place. What logs are being brought into the SIM? What alerts are being put in? Okay, back to the endpoint security on all endpoints bullet here, which says utilize managed detection response service until at least 3,000 employees. Then you can consider an internal SOC or DNR team. I'm actually kind of a believer that not only your SIM, but your EDR capabilities should be monitored by your same team, kind of your SOC team, as you're monitoring for security events, and your EDR tools are now highlighting security events pretty quickly. So your EDR tool could pump into your SIM, or you just have two different dashboards. That being said, depending on the size of your company or your team, like say you have a 600 person company, your company just might be too small for you to build that security operations center, a dedicated detection response team. A friend of mine gave me this term of a SOC sandwich, and I like the name of this term. I'm not sure if he created this, but my friend Mark over at ProdSec Group gave me the name of SOC sandwich a while ago, which is kind of the idea of like, what does your tier 1 SOC team do, your tier 2 and your tier 3? Your tier 1 is a team that's kind of like monitoring for the massive amount of alerts. If your company's small, and the number that I put on here, less than 3,000 employees, don't hire someone to do that. Have an MDR vendor monitoring for your security events, and then if they will be able to close out 70% of the noise, and they'll be able to tune your alerts and get things working a little bit more efficiently. Your tier 2 team is the team that actually needs to get called in when something is an actual alarm that needs internal investigation. That's your tier 2 team. Have some employees do that, right? Have an employee or a small team of employees. They might be doing other things, but they can go investigate these alerts that your MDR partner brought in. And then your tier 3 is when you have a oh crap incident, like something really, really bad is going on. Not just, somebody left a vulnerability open and a small piece of malware made its way onto a server, but the EDR tool, stopped the malware. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, oh crap, we see signs pointing to lapsus is in our network. What do we do? Then your tier 3 SOC kicks in. And I would say your tier 3 SOC should be a detection and response partner. Mandiant, CrowdStrike, not CrowdStrike's EDR tool, but CrowdStrike has a services component, much like Mandiant services. Like you want to have that the bat line where you say, we have signs of an incident. I need you guys to come in now, right? Have someone on retainer to immediately come in. You want to work with your legal team on if you want a retainer or have legal manage that. That's my note here in using an MDR service. If your company is under 3,000 people, my approach is I'm going to hire tier 2 people, but my tier 1 I'm going to outsource, and my tier 3 I'm going to outsource. There's the SOC sandwich. Once my company gets larger than that, I'm going to start hiring internal folks. I know we spend a lot of time on these slides, and I probably won't go through every single ounce of every slide because we will then have the show go on forever and ever. But this is the slide deck that I use to kind of run my business. So utilize an external assessment. I mentioned hiring someone to do a security maturity assessment. I'm not going to read everything on here. I don't think I have. I don't think I go any deeper than this. But basically, what I would do is go find a firm that does cybersecurity assessments, and sometimes look for security maturity assessment or cybersecurity maturity assessment or CSMA. Many of them will use either the NIST cybersecurity framework as a guide, or they will use the CIS critical security controls as a guide, or they will use ISO 27001 as a guide, or maybe they'll have their own framework that they've built up based off of the secure controls framework. If you've not heard of secure controls framework, you can go back and look at my podcasts number 1 and number 2, where I did a deep dive on the secure controls framework. But I like to hire an external firm, an unbiased set of eyes, to come in and conduct a security maturity assessment, which will then end in a fancy document, a fancy presentation, and usually a really ugly spreadsheet that shows where my company is mature and where my company is immature from a cybersecurity perspective. I would highly recommend you bring an external team in. There's a ton of companies that do this, so it's easy to start searching. You might be overwhelmed. Maybe you can just go talk to one of the vendors you work with and say, hey, do you guys do security maturity assessments? And you might be surprised. They say, oh yeah, we have a whole team that does that. Okay, moving on. And I guess the last thing on that is have them conduct the assessment, and then you and part of your leadership team, maybe not all the way up to your CEO, but maybe you sit in the audience while they read out the assessment to you, and then to you and part of your leadership team, and then ask questions along the way, and then ultimately you'll be able to take that and build out what a good roadmap for the rest of your year. So I actually leverage security maturity assessments to build my the work that I'm going to focus on for the next 6 to 12 months. So it's also great to have someone else bring in a maturity assessment. You may see a maturity assessment and you may disagree with some of the results. That's also okay. The assessors aren't perfect. They do not see the business as deep as you and your team does, but having that external set of eyes is huge. The application security, product security side, right? How do you secure your products, your platforms, your applications? Getting security into the software development lifecycle is going to be a key piece here. I'm not expecting you to be an AppSec expert. I'm not expecting you to be a software engineer who knows everything about security. I'm not expecting myself to be that either. But we need to get started, right? If there is software development being done in your organization, you're going to want to do a couple things. First, you're going to want to make sure there's some basic security coding principles. Over on the right of this slide, I have the common security coding principles just by title: input validation, output sanitization. You can see all the rest there. Maybe create a Confluence page and start laying this out. Unless one already exists, it's very possible you already have an AppSec capability in your company and you're inheriting it. Does it have any of this stuff in it? If not, you're starting from scratch. A great way to start is go out and grab the OWASP Top 10 and start building your SDLC around the OWASP Top 10. You can also look at the CIS critical security controls. You can look at the NIST cybersecurity framework, ISO 27001, which is huge for European organizations. From a secure code testing space, this is really where I think AppSec started, at least in my view. Is there a static application security testing tool like a Veracode? I'm wearing the Veracode t-shirt, so it made me think of their name. Is there a dynamic application security testing tool testing web applications in use? Is there secure composition analysis, so testing your open source tooling capability? Do you have an SBOM? Do you have people doing application security code testing in the software development lifecycle? If so, great. Review it, get a sense of where things are at. If not, you can use all the notes here on this page to say, let me make an earmark of things I need to go focus on. Runtime protections. Is there real applications, runtime application security protections in place? Is there a next-gen firewall, single sign-ons, something like that in place? What are you doing for cloud workloads? Dig deep. Is Kubernetes in place? I'm going to say it is. It is somewhere. And who's looking at those containers? Who's looking at those Kubernetes containers? I bet nobody. There are tools out there that can help you get some visibility. Figure out how you get some visibility into your containers that are in development and your containers that are in production. Usually your endpoint security stuff can't, and you need something else to get there. I just love having this slide because it starts allowing me to ask questions to learn a little bit. How are you helping the sales team, or how is the sales team complaining to you? Or is it possible that you found out that there was a huge turnover in your security org over the last year because your security team was just being asked to answer security questionnaire after security questionnaire after security questionnaire, and nobody has figured out a way forward? I feel like this is an area that I've spent so much time and have gotten stronger with over the years. Security sales and support enablement. How are you helping sales close deals quickly because they need you? They can't close deals because the customers are asking questions they don't have the answers to. And customer support, who is dealing with your annual renewals, are going to have the same questions because companies nowadays have to reassess their vendors on an annual basis, and they're going to ask lots of security, compliance, and privacy questions. How is sales and support being helped today? There's a lot that can be done. I have a wall of words here, but I wrote this with great intentions and a whole lot of painful experiences. So get to know your sales leadership, get to know your support leadership, just get to know them. Also get to realize that your chief revenue officer or your chief support officer, you're going to want to get to know them as peers, but you may want to find out who is in the weeds actually trying to deal with these challenges, and you may have to work with those people in the weeds specifically or have someone from your team do this. Find out, is there a centralized database, and that database could be an actual database or a tool, or it could be a Confluence page or a sheet or a spreadsheet of common security questions and answers, right? Is there a list of common questions and answers for customers? Who's maintaining that list? If it doesn't exist, then life is probably painful. I like to use the term as sales SDK, a sales development kit. Build out a security SDK is actually what this should say, a security sales development kit. And in this kit, the goal is you're going to provide this to your salespeople to give to customers, and then just say, hey, you can give this to any customer or potential customer under an NDA. Maybe you want to have a SIG or a SIG Lite or a CAIQ. I always forget that acronym. These are common industry spreadsheets of common questions and answers. Is there a security white paper that you can provide that kind of gives an overview? If not, get someone writing that security white paper. If there's nobody to write that security white paper, you need to write that security white paper. Are there any security architectures that, high-level architecture documents that you can share with customers, right? Customers have lots of questions. You want to be able to provide them common questions and common answers so you don't have to keep answering the questions over and over and over again. You may have some security policies in your company, you have an information security policy, an acceptable use policy, a secure software development lifecycle policy. Can you create a lightweight version of those policies that you can share with customers? Customers will actually ask, I want to see your security policies. And you may say, I don't want to show you my policies. Those are internal documents. So create a lightweight version of those security policies. Include that in your sales SDK. Do you have SOC 2 reports? Get those into your SDK. And then start to educate your sales people, your sales engineers, your solution architects, your support engineers. These are the documentations that you can share. Here's a zip file, which is the SDK. You should get familiar with it, and you can provide it to your customers. And really, what you should be, sales folks, support folks, you can either put on the white glove approach by working directly with your customers, because they may have the tough questions. You can copy and paste the answers from our SIG document or our white papers, or you can provide to a customer and say, everything that we can answer for you is in here. You should be able to find everything you need. These are the only answers we can provide. Again, perfect world scenario is that. Schedule a weekly escalation call with your with your sales leaders, your support leaders, or those who are in the trenches, probably your directors, your VPs, to find out where they're having problems closing deals because of security and privacy questions. Keep that weekly escalation call going until you feel like there's no need for it. But you likely are walking into a mess, and if you schedule a weekly escalation call, you're going to build some good relationships there. You may start to help them identify how they can start to automate some things. Provide education sessions to the sales org. So create sessions that are security sales and support enablement sessions. Invite everybody in the sales org, everybody in the support org. You may have hundreds of people that you invite, and maybe hundreds of people will show up. Try to get the leaders to make it mandatory. Educate them on the security SDK. Educate them on the questions and answers. Educate them on how you want them to respond to customers. Do you want all security requests to be reviewed by you and your team? Do you actually approve that sales can answer on the company's behalf, and you trust that they're going to provide them only the answers that matter? Over time, this may take a while, start getting to know the web team, your web development team. It's probably someone in marketing. Get to know them and start to build a subset of pages underneath your security page, your company's security web page, to create a self-service portal where customers can actually sign an online NDA and get access to that security sales SDK. So it's even less touch. I've done this at a couple previous organizations, and it's reduced the sales cycle, and it's built great relationships with sales and support. If you don't come up with a plan with sales and support, security will be mentioned at every executive leadership meeting. So if there's a quarterly meeting held by your CEO where VPs get to speak and leaders get to speak, security will be mentioned as a boat anchor that's holding them down from closing deals and making life a whole lot more difficult. So you're going to likely need to get your arms around this process. So these are just my notes to say these are things I've done. Security compliance, I like how I write, spend money to make more money. That is truly my thoughts around the world of compliance. Spend money to make more money. And so put a few things in here. This is you getting to know your compliance programs. What certificates, what attestations are currently underway at what level? Do you have a SOC 2 Type 1? Do you have SOC 2 Type 2? Do you have ISO? Do you have, we can continue to go on and on down the list. What certifications do you currently hold? What attestations do you currently hold? Why? Why do you hold them? Sometimes people will give you a why and be like, I don't know. We've just been doing it for a bunch of years. And come to find out, some customer many years ago under a contract required you to do an ISAE 3402. And you're like, I actually don't know who or why we did that for. And I don't know what the value is, but we just keep doing it every year. Learn. Are your certificates, are your attestations helping you to increase revenue as a company? Are they actually helping you like bring more value? Is there a time to value number you can work from? What certs, what attestations is the company interested in and why? Someone saying we want to be FedRAMP level 3 compliant. Why? Probably because someone in the federal sales team is like, if we're FedRAMP, I think I can make a whole lot more money for the company. But come to find out, for real, is there real money to be made there? Or is it just someone, hoping for that case? Are there other certificates that people want? People want, ISO 27001. Why? Why do you want ISO 27001? Why isn't our NIST cybersecurity framework assessment good enough? Find out why. What products or part of the company is in scope for your compliance efforts? Is it the whole company under ISO 27001? Or is it just a small piece of it? Is just some product that is? Why? Why are certain things not in scope? What isn't in scope and why? Who's your internal auditor? Does a company have an internal auditor? Get to know that person. Or is your company so small they have not yet hired an internal auditor? Most likely, if your company is not highly regulated, you may not have an internal audit team or internal auditor. Usually, internal audit reports into the CFO in the finance department. And if your company is not highly regulated, you may not have an internal auditor, but maybe you hired a company to play your internal auditor who helps you prepare for audits. Who's your external auditor? Do you have one? Do you have many? Get to know them. Go meet them. They are definitely not going to be employees of the company, but who's been doing your audits in the past? Do you have Sarbanes-Oxley audits, which means you're a U.S. publicly traded company? Do you have a SOC 2 auditor? Do you have an ISO auditor? And we can go down a whole list. Who is your project manager or your program manager for implementing controls of your compliance program? So if you're doing ISO, SOC 2, SOX, IT SOX, who is the PM of all the controls that need to be implemented? If there's no answer, that PM is you and things are failing already, because somebody needs to have a list of the controls that need to be implemented, updated, managed, matured, and working towards getting those completed in prep for an audit. And what does the project plan look like? Get your arm around the compliance program. Those are the big areas that I wanted to cover. The next pieces here is something that I put on the slide deck a while ago, and I always thought it was interesting. Hey, where should the CISO live in the org chart? This really doesn't play into my first 100 days. It just is sometimes a conversation I bring up, and I have it on these slides here, so I'm going to mention them really briefly. Chief Security Officer often reports to the CIO or the Chief Product Officer or the CTO, or newer roles like the Chief Digital Officer. This is most commonly, I'd say almost every time I've had a role as a permanent or a contract role, has always reported into this area. And it's interesting. These are notes that I gathered, not notes that I created. But this is the most highly ineffective role because it makes the Chief Security Officer or Chief Information Security Officer. Just know in this slide here, when I created this slide, I was working as a role that was the Chief Security Officer, not the Chief Information Security Officer. In truth, they were the exact same role, just some company decided to not have the I in the title. Reporting to one of the technical leaders is the most ineffective use because security becomes truly a technical issue or a product issue or an infrastructure issue, and it commonly forgets like a lot of parts of the business. Next slide I had here is if your Chief Information Security Officer reports to your CFO, it's a little bit better than being technical, but then your CFO thinks of it as, security is kind of an insurance for the company. I have always enjoyed working with and partnering with the CFOs of the companies I've worked with, but I've also found that they are, just in my experience, not very experienced from a technical and a security perspective. So our conversations very common are apples and oranges. And I find that I have found that challenging, or I found it less challenging reporting to the technical folks. Because we can have those technical conversations, and then I can show them how the role is actually wider. With the CFO, I find it really tough because a lot of the CISO role is very technical. Even though there's a lot of business to it, there's a lot of technical with it as well. I found good partnership with CFO, but I'm not sure. I've never reported to the CFO, and there can be concern there. One other thing here, it doesn't really focus on the trust of the customer because that's outside of the focus of the finance department. Chief Security Officer reporting to General Counsel or legal. I've had really great relationships with my legal team, and I've never actually reported to legal, but I've always partnered with legal very closely on just about everything. And my general counsel becomes, a very close partner of mine. I like to say my best friend in the company. Your general counsel, your legal should become your best friend as well in the company. So I've never reported here, but I could actually see this could be a good partnership here. Just keep in mind that reporting to legals, things start to kind of lean more compliance first. Last slide here is security reporting to the CEO. Right, to me, the most effective, most efficient, most strategic. Tough thing is CEOs, like any other manager, they're just a manager. They have a lot of people reporting to them. They may find it difficult to have another person reporting to them. But reporting to the CEO, will get you that seat at the weekly table, meeting with the other leaders of the business, and it takes your small C in your CISO title and makes it a big C. You're likely going to be able to be more influential from financial decisions of the company, corporate decisions in the company, major business initiatives, because the CEO is going to be talking to you on a more regular basis versus you trying to get some time. You'll truly be that strategic partner. Usually, I'd say the CISO reporting to the CEO is less frequent in many cases. Sometimes you have to earn your right to be there versus be appointed. Anyways, that's the end of my slides for today, folks. We did it. It's a lot of information. Every single one of these weeks, it's a ton of information. That was Death by Slides for the week.